And good evening once again, college hoops fans. Welcome to another Hoops HD preseason podcast where we are going to be previewing over the course of the next couple of weeks. We're going to be doing previews of all the major conferences. And tonight's episode is the Big East. And I know a conference that's near and dear to several of our hearts, as either our teams are currently or former members of the Big East. Me personally being a Rutgers guy, but my name is Chad Sherwood again. Just briefly introduce the rest of the cast here. John T., John S., Joby, and David. How is everybody doing here?
Great.
No, don't all talk at once. Okay.
Doing well, Chad, and we appreciate from the ACC country receiving the gifts of the Big East, such as Syracuse and lovely Boston College. We can give that one back.
Well, I am no longer a Big East guy, as my school spent 1 year in the American, is now in the Big Ten, where we are going to promptly finish dead last this year. But John S. there, we know you are now a Big East guy in Big East country out there in Ohio, correct?
Yep, the heart of it all here in Ohio.
And last year was a pretty interesting year for the Big East. I believe that during the course of the season, it was 8 out of the 10 teams spent at least some time in the top 25. 6 teams in the NCAA tournament. 60%, that's a pretty good number for almost any conference out there. Tournament success was a little bit of a different story, as only one team even made it out of the first weekend, and that was Xavier, which got a bit of help getting there.
Yeah. It has been, and that's been one of the major downers on this conference. It's again, when you're in big cities, which the Big East is, and you're putting teams in the top 25, which at least they did last year, and you're depending on the RPI or what power rating you look at, either the second or third ranked conference, you would think that that's right in line with the power conferences, but where they came up miserably short and have the last 2 years is just their performance in the NCAA tournament. 2 years ago they had 4 teams in, but one of them, Xavier, didn't make the round of 64. The other, Providence, got in via the automatic bid, and they probably don't get in without it. So really they only had 2 teams safely inside the bubble. Neither of them really did anything. And
Villanova was a 2 seed that year and got upset in this second round.
Right. So I mean, yeah, they've gotten one team past the round of 32, and I believe they have never beaten a team seeded better than 10th in the NCAA tournament. That's a little, they're coming up short there. I don't know if it's just dumb luck or what, but that is rather noticeable.
The closest team that came to pulling off an upset last year was Butler in their third round game against Notre Dame, but thankfully this year we can call it the second round again.
Yeah, I mean, but if you look at last year, they did put, I mean, they had a 1 seed, a 4 seed, 3 6 seeds, a 9 seed. It just looks like it was such a good conference, and again, just a complete implosion, much like the Big 12 imploded also in the postseason last year. We'll talk about that next week. Let's take a look at where we are for the Big East heading into this season. Villanova has won this conference each of the last 2 years, has been the dominant team, a 2 seed followed by a 1 seed. I think they're the team to beat again. Does anybody disagree with me on that?
No, and I think once again they're going to be ranked high for most of the year.
Let me start with let's just talk a little bit about this Villanova team, though. John T., let me throw it at you. How good is this Villanova team, both not only in terms of the Big East, but overall nationally as well?
They're good. I think there might be a little drop-off from last year only because they were so amazing last year in the regular season, as we correctly pointed out. They're coaching Jay Wright, again, average postseason success, but he has money in the regular season. Conference Coach of the Year each of the last 2 years. They have size with Daniel Ochefu inside. They have a great point guard in Ryan Arcidiacono. They have the possible Rookie of the Year in the Big East in Jalen Brunson, who I thought was going to be a point guard and kind of butt heads with Ryan Arcidiacono in terms of getting playing time. Now I hear he's more of a wing, so I think they can actually coexist together. It's schedule looks decent. A rough Georgia Tech team in the ACC. Virginia, which is going to be brutal. Oklahoma is going to be very tough. Stanford, so it will be battle tested. And the unsung player, he was sung about a little last year, Josh Hart, as the sixth man of the year last year, and conference tourney MVP as the sixth man. That never happens. So hopefully he can get a lot more playing time. And then the other sleeper for going forward is Eric Pascal, the transfer from Fordham, who was Conference Rookie of the Year in his own conference 2015. Sits out this year, but next year he should step right into the backcourt.
Yeah, but now you look at this Villanova team, though. They lose Darren Hilliard, Javon Pinkston, Dylan Ennis, three guys that averaged over 9 points per game. That's a lot of scoring to make up for this year. You don't think that that's going to cause them to fall back, or is it simply that there's no one else in the conference good enough to step up over them?
There's only 3 teams that have beaten Villanova over the past 2 years. One is Creighton, the other one is Seton Hall, and the other one is Georgetown. Of those 3, Georgetown is the only one that you can probably be sure that it's going to be able to beat Villanova at least once this year. But I do think, as we'll discuss later on, other teams are probably going to start catching up a little bit to Villanova this year.
Yeah,
I think you're going to see some of that scoring replaced. Brunson mentioned, John T. hit the highlights. Brunson, I think, is going to replace a lot of it. Ochefu will be the best big man. You could argue will. I mean, he'll be at least all Big East. Let's put it that way. You're looking at 30 wins. They're testing themselves out of conference. They're doing everything right. And like I said earlier, it just is frustrating to me because I feel like Jay Wright is doing everything correctly. The program's doing everything correctly. March success has eluded them. They got to get past that, though. It's almost expected for them to be the disappointment in March now.
John, as you mentioned this Georgetown team, obviously they're your pick to be the second best team in the conference, I would assume. Obviously Smith Rivera is, I'd argue, is the best player in the entire conference over there at Georgetown. I'm just not certain that Georgetown has enough other weapons to complement him to even finish second in this conference.
They did have some pretty good freshmen last year. I think Peake and Copeland were 2 of the top freshmen in the conference last year who expected to be taking up a bigger workload this year. But the good news for Georgetown this offseason was Devontae Smith-Rivera decided to pull his name out of the NBA draft and will be returning for his senior season.
Well, let me throw this over to you, David. The team that I like second best in this conference, at least, and look at your thoughts on it, is this Butler team. We mentioned during our ACC podcast earlier, John T. I know you had a great interview today with Chris Holtmann.
it was great.
It really was a great interview. But I like this team heading into this year a lot.
Yeah, are we finally to a point? Going back, let's look at Butler. I think it was 99 when they made it, it was 2000 when they made the NCAA tournament as a senior laden team, I think, lost to Florida at the buzzer in the round of 64, and everyone said, well, that was their one chance. They blew it. They'll never be good again. And then their coach left. I think it was Barry Collier, wherever he went.
It was Nebraska.
Yeah. And then Thad Matta takes over, and then the next year they get to the round of 32, and of course, he leaves to go to Xavier, and Butler's never going to be good again. And then in 2002, they have another really good year under, I believe it was Licklider was the coach. Something really unfortunate happened. I think they lost 2 starters to injury in the final week of the season, dropped 2 of their last 3 games, ended up right on the bubble but missed it. And everybody's like, well, that was their one chance to get in at large. They'll never be back. 2003, they're in the Sweet 16. Then they kind of went away for a while, and they never went back. 06 or 07, I think they were picked to finish 6th or 7th in the conference. They win the league, finished in the rankings, go to the Sweet 16. Licklider leaves, and of course they're never going to be good again. They had a coach that was so young that he was mistaken for a player in street clothes in some of their early season games. That was Brad Stevens. And they, again, had another big year, and then they're like, well, he did it with Licklider's players. Are we and then all the way up to where Chris Holtmann's first year, at the beginning of last year, people were saying Butler was done, the party is over. Are we finally to a point after 15 years to where we realize Butler isn't going anywhere?
I have to agree with you there. I mean, this team, I did not expect much from them last year. They won 23 games last year. And you look at it, I mean, they've got Roosevelt, Jones, Kravitz, Dunham. That they bring in transfers like Tyler Lewis from NC State this year. I like this Butler team, and I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, they're starting off. I think they're ranked in the 20s. I actually think they're better than that. I don't know if I like them as much as Villanova, but this is a team. I think this is a protected seed team. They are good, and they're well coached. I've been a Chris Holtmann fan since he was at Gardner-Webb. I think he's clearly the person that's going to continue to make, to have Butler as a successful program. I like them a lot. I think they're really good.
Well, and they also have another transfer. I'm sorry. They also have another notable transfer from St. Bonaventure and Jordan Gathers, who is the nephew of the late Hank Gathers.
Oh, that's
I think he's going to be eligible to play this year.
Yeah, he will be eligible as well. But John T., you've had a chance to speak to Holtmann just recently. What are your thoughts on this Butler team this year?
My thoughts are that they're going to make the tourney, and I don't know about a top 20 in the nation kind of ranking just because they really maxed out last year. They lost in overtime to Notre Dame, who was a top 3 seed. I mean, that's fantastic. They had some injury problems with Schrabis and Jones last year, and going with Jones, it seems like his whole career, unfortunately.
Yeah.
If they're healthy, that certainly helps. Kellen Dunham is a great shooter and a senior leader for them. And Holtmann proved in just taking over. He literally took over like weeks before the season started and got them into the tourney and almost beat Notre Dame. That was fantastic. I have to think that there's going to be a little downswing from that. Holtmann's amazing. He was an All-American at a tiny little school called Taylor University. He played with John Gross, then worked for Gross at Ohio, then went to Gardner-Webb, was Conference Coach of the Year. He's really an up-and-comer, and I hope that he sticks around Butler a long time because I assume he's going to be a hot coaching candidate with so many coaching hot seats out there around the country.
And he did well at Gardner-Webb. They went from, I think his first year there, they won 5 Div 1 games. By the time he was done, they had won more than 20. So it's not as if he wasn't proven before he got to Butler. He's really good.
Well, when Butler was a Horizon League school, I understood that, hey, they have a good season, somebody poaches their coach. Do you think that's coming now that Butler is allegedly a power conference here? I really is a power conference, the Big East, or do you think there's still a type of school where the coach is going to be poached by a Big Ten or an SEC school?
Butler's still it isn't so much moving up as far as up to a power conference. It's Butler still doesn't spend a whole lot on basketball. They spend a lot, but they don't spend what your Big Ten and ACC schools spend on basketball, and they might just not be able to afford them. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen at some of these schools, but like if Clemson opens up and they really want to go after them, it's back in sort of where he was at before, a similar part of the country, and they got a lot of money.
That's a good point. Other than we talked a little Georgetown already. John S., I know this is your school. It's the only school in the Big East and its current incarnation that's ever made the Sweet 16 after they got lucky and got to play Georgia State instead of Baylor last year in the second round, or the round of 32. Let's talk a little Xavier. Matt Stainbrook is gone. Are they going to be back this year, and how good are they going to be?
It's not just Matt Stainbrook that's going to be gone, but they also lose their point guard in D. Davis. Mm-hmm. But they do have other guys that will be stepping in, like Jalen Reynolds, who is now going to be a starter. His question will be, can he keep out of foul trouble and not pick up untimely technicals? One example was during the Big East tournament last year where Xavier was up by 20 points against Georgetown and committed, I think it was a flagrant foul that changed the tone of the game, and Georgetown almost came back on that one.
What do you think about the freshmen that they brought in, though? Guys like Edmund Sumner, McKinley London. I mean, are these guys going to be able to contribute this year right away, or are they going to take some time?
I think it's going to be easier for Sumner and London because they're actually redshirt freshmen who, well, Sumner was a medical redshirt. He did play in a couple games last year, but there's also reports that McKinley London has also been tearing it up in practice. And they also have a true freshman in Kaiser Gates who should also be eligible for this season. But another thing that we saw from Xavier last year, they're like NC State in this regard. They're capable of beating anyone in this conference. They're also capable of losing to anyone in this conference on any given night.
They really, for up until I would say the end of, about mid-February, they had struggled on the road all year long, and I mean losing to teams that were sub-NIT. They lost to Auburn. They lost to, UTEP, which wasn't a bad loss, but who else was it? Did Long Beach State beat somebody? They lost a couple games.
It was Long Beach and the Anaheim tournament last year?
Right, and I think they went to DePaul and lost. I mean, they're just losing. And it's hard to go on the road and win in the Big East. It really is. I mean, the arenas are intense. It's hostile environments, and the teams are really good. But it wasn't until like the end of the year where Xavier started to string together some wins away from home. And I think what really changed the complexion of their profile were those 2 neutral floor wins in the Big East tournament. But if this team can win on the road, which there's reason to think that they can, because toward the end of last year, they won the 2 games in the NCAA tournament, they won the 2 games in the Big East tournament, and they started to play better on the road down the stretch. I think they lost in overtime at Providence. They had some really close calls. I think that this is a Xavier team that's going to be better than where they're forecasted at now. I like this team a lot. They're a little unproven at the point guard position, but I think they're pretty strong around the board other than that.
Joby, let me bring you in here. David just mentioned Providence, in fact, and we spoke about Smith Rivera. If he's not the best player in the conference,
Chris Dunn's the best player in the conference. I was about to say it when that was trotted out.
Okay.
I think it's more than just the conference in some circles.
Yeah, I mean, he's a lottery pick. I mean, this kid's awesome. And the combo with him and Bullock is, I mean, yeah, I don't know how good Providence is going to be as a team because inside, Villanova, I already mentioned, and Reynolds and Xavier, they're big men who could exploit the lack of depth for the Providence there, but. Man, are they going to be fun to watch. I mean, this team, it's going to be a lot of fun. Just run and, man, it's going to be fun.
Well, I guess that's the question. They're going to be a fun, and I think Dunn is going to be a great, really entertaining to watch this season. But is that going to be enough to get them even into the bubble considerations? Or
bubble, certainly. I think because they're going to get wins. When you have a great player and a couple of great players, I'm not comparing them to UConn with Napier Boatwright, but it's that sort of dynamic that they're going to win games. You're talking about who can beat Villanova. I think Providence on a given day could beat Villanova in a heartbeat. Not saying they will.
Well, yeah, but if Dunn scores about 50 points, but
yeah, they could also lose by 50, and they could lose to DePaul. On a given day, but they're going to be in the thick of it because they're going to get some quality wins. They're going to find quality wins here. And the conference is solid enough to deliver that. Will they be actually in? No. But I think we're going to be discussing them as part of our bubble talk in February and
March. John T., let me bring you back in here. Is there anybody else that you're looking at as a NCAA tournament caliber team from the Big East here?
Yeah, I'll give you my sleeper. It's actually Marquette. Steve Wojciechowski now in year number 2, bringing in an All-American, McDonald's All-American, and Henry Ellenson, who, if Jalen Brunson doesn't win Rookie of the Year, I think it's Henry's award to lose. And then they have the other big man, Luke Fisher, who only played – he missed last November after transferring. Now he's got a full season to Jody's made of. Certainly not like a top 6 seed or anything, but I think Marquette has a decent shot of making the NCAA tourney this year.
And they have no seniors on the entire roster here either, so I think it's going to be really interesting next year with this Marquette team.
Yeah.
David, anybody else that you're looking at in this conference?
Actually, no, I mean, no, I mean the three I really like are the three that we talked about at the top, like the Xavier, Butler, and Nova. I'm not big on Creighton or DePaul.
Okay. Well, let me bring up a team here that no one's mentioned yet. Arguably, their best player is going to be playing for UConn this year, but this may be a team that gets better by subtraction. That's Seton Hall. You still have Kadeem Carrington and Isaiah Whitehead. You're bringing in Derek Gordon, who transferred in from UMass. I think that there's a chance that Seton Hall could surprise some people this year. I think there's a lot of just internal problems with this team last year. I just don't think these guys played together at all. I don't think they liked each other.
What gave you that idea?
Well, when guys are getting thrown off the team. But I mean, if they've gotten the chemistry issues resolved, I would not be surprised to see Seton Hall there.
I think what's ironic about Seton Hall was this was after.
Luke Garrett.
Today,
Yeah.
I consider myself.
Yeah, we'll catch a little feedback from you there, Joby.
Yeah.
All right, no, I was going to say about Seton Hall.
Oh. Yeah.
I think this was after Isaiah Whitehead was injured in mid-season. I think that's when they started to have some of their chemistry issues. Yeah. Jaren Cena had also transferred out of the program. And that's when they started to lose some of their games towards the end of the season.
What did Joby do?
Joby, we're getting a little bit of feedback from you. We're trying to get that cleared up. I think it's getting a little better now.
Yeah.
Let me throw it back over here to John T. As we move kind of below the bubble, I guess, in this conference here. Creighton, is this team just in total rebuild mode this year, or is there any chance of any success in this program?
They're in semi-rebuild mode. I mean, I love Greg McDermott as a coach. I loved his son even better as a player, but he's a good coach. And I don't think they have many seniors, if any. Cole Huff, Mo Watson Jr., Isaiah Zierden, all juniors. Marcus Foster transferring from Kansas State, also a junior. So their schedule is a bit tough. They got Indiana and Oklahoma. Not easy on either of those counts. I don't think they're going to be a big contender this year, but next year, once the seniors all have a year together, I like their chances next year.
Let me throw something over here I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
Oh no, I've never been that impressed with McDermott. Even back in the Northern Iowa days, it just seems like those teams could have been better than what they were. It seems like the McDermott formula is that they have a really impressive November and December, and then they start to taper off. And yeah, they had some good teams at Northern Iowa, but you just got the feeling, I don't know, that they were never at their ceiling. I'm not as big on McDermott as I guess John T. is. I'm not expecting much from them.
Joby, over at DePaul, we have Dave Lato take 2. Nobody has ever had such any success there, but they're going to try to bring Lato back again to give another shot.
I just hope Virginia doesn't try to hire him again. That's Billy Garrett Jr. is a pretty good player. He'll get some consideration for all conference. They're going to be better, but yeah, and Lato had success there. Now he had talent when he was there before to have that success, but DePaul is DePaul. They're underwhelming on their facilities. They're in trouble long term. It's just kind of, Ray Meyer's not walking through that door.
Oh.
Meyer's not walking through that door. And I'm afraid DePaul is still DePaul and not going to make that jump needed for what was an amazingly proud program.
I don't get that. I really don't. How is it that DePaul, I mean, it's a good school. It's in a great location. They have a lot of centrally located alumni. I've been to Chicago. They kind of like basketball there. How is it that they are that pathetic? That like, programs like UIC and Loyola tend to be better than they are. They're being out-recruited in their own city by Missouri Valley schools. How is DePaul that bad? Now, part of it is it takes 40 minutes to get from campus to the arena, and the arena is lousy. I mean, facilities are an issue, but it's them in Fordham. I don't see how you can be where you are with the type of school you are and not even be top 200. Well, DePaul's a little better than that, but not by much. How are they that lousy?
There is going to be a new arena on the way to downtown Chicago for DePaul in a few years. I think they've already broken ground on it.
Okay. Is it for them, or is it just a new arena that they're going to use?
They're going to be one of the tenants, but I think possibly one of the primary tenants in I think it's McCormick Place or somewhere near that area.
Well, I think we'd be remiss if we don't discuss every team in the Big East, and we got one more that was in the NCAA tournament last year and then had the entire roster fall off, and that's St. John's. We've got a new head coach in there, and Chris Mullen. The top returning scorer is Alec Begovic, who scored 1.5 points per game last year. How bad is this team going to be this year? I think Mullen's going to get this team there eventually. I hope he would, but I think it's going to be one of the biggest downward turns of any program in the country.
Has Mullen ever been a coach at any level? An assistant? I'm a little puzzled by the hire. He could turn out to be great. I just don't. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that I'm not expecting it to happen. I'm not expecting it to not happen either, but that's a big question mark when you go with a guy that's never coached anywhere.
Never coached, and you have no players returning for him either.
Well, other than that, I think the
John T., do you think, how is James St. John's going to win this year?
I'll go with I'll set the over/under at 13, and not sure if I'm going to take the under or not. I think the reason they hired him is that he's a Hall of Famer who's the leading scorer in school history. He got Mitch Richmond to join, so I'm praying that they can bring back Tim Hardaway, print out 1 million of those Run TMC shirts, and just restock the budget for the athletic department. It's going to be a rough year. They play Indiana and Syracuse. The rest of the schedule, non-conference-wise, looks decent.
Yeah, they do have a tough game against NJIT. Don't forget that one.
They're going to lose. I don't think NJIT is going to beat them.
Well, on that note, let's go through everybody. Any other final comments about the Big East? Let me start off with John T. Any other comments about the Big East this season?
Just one. I wanted to make sure people were. I think it's just the talent level when you compare it to the ACC. If my research is correct, the ACC had 8 of the top 32 picks in last year's NBA draft. Wow. A total of 5 schools: Duke, Louisville, Notre Dame, Virginia, Syracuse. The highest drafted Big East player last year, Darren Hilliard, 38th overall. There's just a talent level drop-off.
Yeah. That's a great point. John asked any other points regarding the Big East?
I think Creighton is going to be a wild card this year simply because they played so many close games last year. So we'll have to see if they're able to improve this year and whether Creighton will be the dungeon at home that it's been in the past. They did win at Xavier last year, so we'll see if they can pull off a similar upset or two this year.
Joby.
Will Georgetown show something that is somewhat memorable? Because it seems like with JT3, every year seems to run together. Will they be able to break out of what has been a cycle of above average but still mediocrity just the same?
And David.
Will they beat a team seeded better than 10th in the NCAA tournament this year? Anybody?
Well, I think the big question for me with the Big East is what does Villanova do in the NCAA tournament? Can they finally not only make the Sweet 16, but they've had teams that have been Elite Eight capable or Final Four capable and just have been so just falling apart there. And I think that this may be the year they finally break out, but it's tough for me to pick them to go in depth. It's tough for me to seriously consider Villanova as a potential Final Four team just based on past tournament results. But on that note, I want to thank everybody for joining us again. We'll be back again later on this week with, I believe, the Big Ten preview will be up next. And thanks a lot, everybody.